And I just had visions of her just using the Find My iPhone app and banging my door down and just accusing me of being the other woman. And it's kind of like, no, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just tattooing your husband's head. I'm not doing anything. Yeah, it's
Imagine. Hello and welcome to the Scalp Culture podcast, where we talk everything scalp micropigmentation. On today's podcast, we are joined by Michelle, who is a Scalp Culture partner in the south of Wales. We'll be getting an insight into what is life like as a scalp micropigmentation artist and learning what kind of challenges she faces in her clinic. This podcast will be especially useful for those who are thinking about getting the SMP treatment, as well as SMP artists. If it's your first time joining us, be sure to subscribe to the channel to get notified each time we upload future content, as well as give this video a like if you found value in this video. This video is brought to you by Icon SMP, where you can get all of your scalp micropigmentation products. So without further delay, let's get Michelle into the podcast. And can you hear us, Michelle?
yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really good. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule today to join us. We really do appreciate that.
No, you're welcome.
And to start off today, we'd like to find out who you are and what is it that you do.
Okay, so basically I'm an SMP artist based in South Wales in a place called Bridgend, which is situated half an hour drive from Cardiff, and then in the other direction it's half an hour drive to Swansea. So we're literally just off the M4, it's about 2-minute drive, so we're quite easy to get to. 5 minutes from the local train station. So yeah, so we're very easy to access. So basically, obviously, I'm the SMP artist here for the clinic, and I've got quite a creative background with a degree in theatre design and a teaching background. So I used to teach design technology. So yeah.
Excellent. And I'd like to ask, how did you become an SMP artist?
As I said, I've always been creative and kind of always been interested in art, and it's always been something that I've kind of followed. So I think I got to a stage where I was just fed up of the usual 9 to 5, and I was coming away from the whole creative aspect of a career. So I thought, how can I kind of get back into doing something, and then something that's creative, something that's I can manage my own time, I can have a bit more family time. So then obviously I kind of come across the whole scalp micropigmentation on social media, and that's when I kind of looked, I thought, well, I can do that as creative, and at the same time I can help other people. So that's when I went for my training. I spontaneously booked my training with Scalp Culture, and it kind of all went from there, really. Yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, I mean, of course, I remember your training with us, and you mentioned that you was tired of the 9 to 5. You wanted to get out of that. You was bored of the kind of officey kind of work. You wanted to get into something that where you can manage your own schedule. And you've managed to do that now, which is absolutely fantastic. And I always congratulate you on that, because you worked really, really hard towards that. So congratulations to you. I know I say it a lot, but well deserved.
Yeah, I can actually attend my daughter's sports day now, and I just remember in a previous job that I had, I always remember not being able to go to a sports day, but now I can do those things now. I can take her to school, I can pick her up from school, and it's a complete change.
So Michelle, with yourself being based in South Wales, what type of clients do you see in your clinic?
We see a mixture, really. I think we have male, female clients. Clients with like full male pattern baldness, alopecia clients, but density clients, a mixture of people that just want maybe like a full head of that shaved hair look, or clients that just want that extra bit of density within their existing hair. So yeah, we get a whole range, different ages as well. We get I think the youngest I've had so far is probably 20, 21. Range up until about I think a guy is in his 70s. So yeah, a whole range of male, female clients come in.
Yeah, I mean, similar to yourself, I've treated people in their 70s, and I don't feel that there's anything wrong with looking after your appearance whatsoever.
No, definitely not. No, and I think hair loss effects can affect anybody, can't it? Any age. So yeah, there's no time like the present.
So Michelle, with that, would you say that SMP works for clients of all skin tones?
Definitely, because say that obviously the pigment that we use, obviously we use icon pigment. It's it's formulated specially for a range from white skin, all the way to olive, tanned, mixed light brown skin, all the way up to to very dark black skin. So yeah, it's very good. We obviously use the mixing chart to to help us give to guide us.
Yeah, so you can create different shades for different clients with different skin tones.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, Michelle, I'm just firing some questions at you here. And another one I've got for you is how long until somebody can return to the gym after having the SMP treatment?
Our guidelines normally are after they finish completed each treatment, we will say to a client about 7 days. So 7 days for light sweat, and then for excessive sweat, we give a guideline of about 10 days. Um, so basically what we do say sometimes if clients are booking in beforehand, we do make them aware of this, so if they've got anything in their diary, or if they if they do kind of go to the gym, then to make sure that they need to have so many days off, and sometimes they like to kind of get a good workout in before their treatment, so they know then they can have a couple of days, or up to 7 days, 10 days, off. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really is important that a customer does follow the aftercare guidelines to get the best result from their SMP treatment. So, you mentioned that you're using pigment for your SMP treatments. What type of pigment do you use at the Wales Clinic?
So obviously we're using the icon pigment at the moment. As well as the icon pigment, we use icon needles, the superfine, the Pro Series needle. So we use the 04, 06, 08, 010 needles, all for different kind of areas of the hair. So for example, we'll use 10 for obviously any density treatment, or for on darker skin. We'll use the 0806 needles for just like the full coverage all over. And then sometimes then we'll use like a 06 or 04 then, just to kind of get a softer, nice soft hairline. Using those correct needles as well as the icon pigment, we get fantastic results.
Yeah, and I do love the Icon Pro Series needles. I do find they give a really fine, crisp impression. I feel like since I've been using them, they've taken my treatments up another level, you know?
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Yeah, yeah.
Another question that a lot of clients have is about minoxidil use. So some customers they might be using like the topical minoxidil solution, which slows the hair loss down. If a customer is using minoxidil, how long is it until they have to stop using it? I mean, can they use it throughout the treatment process as well?
We would definitely recommend that they'd stop using minoxidil before the treatment, and for at least 30 days after the treatment, only because the high alcohol content.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everybody's got their own take on aftercare, but similar to you, I recommend 30 days to stop using minoxidil for 30 days after their last treatment session, and then they can continue using it after then.
And it's a similar thing as well, isn't it, with hair dye? So we do, recommend, especially the female clients, to avoid dyeing their hair. Similar time really, isn't it? And after having the treatment, just so it doesn't affect obviously this how it settles, how the pigment settles within the skin.
Yeah, I mean, the treatment's still healing, so you don't want to put anything on it while it's healing that's going to affect the treatment in any way. So back to yourself, what is the most enjoyable part of being an SMP artist?
Oh, I think it's lots of things really. I think it's quite a lot of things to quite a lot of things I enjoy about it. I think what like I've said before, I really enjoy the creativeness of it, and I get quite excited between each sessions, and just seeing how it each session transitions and it progresses, and it's like a canvas to me. I can yeah, I get quite excited about it. It's quite sad, but the other side of that is just being able to see how it helps people's confidence, how it kind of plays a big part on people's lives, and what it means to them, and even their partners. We get kind of messages from partners as well saying, oh, it looks great, he's looks a lot younger. And but yeah, but that, and also running the business side of things, being able to kind of have that time, that family time, and not having to answer to anybody, and just, yeah, I think there's definitely lots of pros.
Yeah, and I feel it's actually amazing, watching the transition of a client, walking into your clinic where they've got that kind of balding area on their scalp to seeing them, fast forward to the last session where they've got that end result, they've got the natural hairline back in place, and they just look completely different, like it's amazing. I mean, I'm glad that I didn't opt for a different hair loss solution, such as a hair transplant or using minoxidil or something like that. It's just, for me, it's just the maintenance of it. I mean, with a hair transplant, for example, you do have to use minoxidil for the rest of your life to keep the hair growth strong. So I'm quite glad that I opted for SMP because it allowed me to just, like I say, put hair loss behind me once and for all. And the maintenance is super, super low.
Yeah, yeah. I think funny enough, a couple of clients have actually said with it, like the hair fibers, they say, I'm just fed up with wearing the hair fibers. It's same thing, I want to go swimming. I don't want to kind of feel as though I can't jump in the water because I've got these fibers on my head. So and sometimes hair transplant is just not an option for some people, and it's, there's so many, there are pros, but there's also cons as well. So when SMP is definitely is a good alternative.
Michelle, I mean, what can customers expect when they come to you as an artist? I mean, what is your sort of speciality? What is it
Mm.
that you're really big on doing when it comes to treatments?
Okay, I think one of the biggest things that feedback we get from a lot of our clients is just the natural look. People look at our portfolio and they'll say, I really like the natural soft hairlines. It's undetectable. It's, I don't want to kind of have um, something that's going to be really heavy and stand out, and people to think, oh, what have you done? What's that? They said, I want it natural, and I think we definitely do that. That's something that we're kind of quite known for having the natural and detectable results. So
Yeah, and I think that especially in the UK, a lot of customers do prefer the natural,
yeah,
undetectable results. I
yeah,
mean, we see a lot of treatments from artists all around the world. I appreciate that in different countries
yeah,
certain
yeah,
people opt for different types of hairlines.
yeah,
So let's say, for example, what I find, this is my own opinion, of course, that in America, where you have a lot of artists, they have more of a bold kind of look, shall we say?
yeah, yeah.
I would say that a lot, not everybody, of course, but a lot of people opt for stronger hairlines and more
Mm-hmm.
of a bolder, maybe a darker look. I do feel that in the UK, we're probably a little bit more reserved in the UK, aren't we?
Yeah,
So people
yeah,
do prefer the
definitely, yeah,
sort of softer, more subtle look.
yeah,
And, I always say to people, we want them to look like they've got a full head of hair, full shaven
mm,
head of hair. We don't want them to walk out of the clinic looking like they've got a hair tattoo. So
yeah, yeah.
I personally think that natural is the way to go, and
Mm.
it's nice to hear that that's your specialty as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. No, no, we're definitely known for that. Yeah, but
Yeah.
we still do get a couple of clients that do come in and ask for a bit of a sharp kind of shape up hairline, in which we can still achieve that. We can still do that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and sometimes when you post your work online as well, somebody might say, "Oh, I'm not too keen on that hairline style or that they've chosen." But what they don't realize is that obviously the customer is the person who has to wear the hairline.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the ultimate decision is with them. And of course, we give them our professional feedback on how where we feel their hairline should be, and so on, so on. And of
mm,
course, if they're asking for anything that's crazy, of course we can't do that. We're not going to
mm,
put our name, to that kind of work. So
yeah,
there's sort of a limitations
boundaries.
on that, but
Yeah,
yeah, of course. But if we've got a customer who we feel that can suit a sharp hairline, and that's what they want, of course we'll do that for them.
mm, definitely. Yep.
Yeah, so what are the biggest challenges that you come across as an SMP artist?
I think it's just meeting people's expectations to start with. I think it's, sometimes people come in with a bit of an idea of what they want, and sometimes they want it done straight away. They want, they've got to understand that it is a process. It's done over 3 sessions, and it can't just be done in one go. It is a process, and there is a bit of a wait in between each session. So it's kind of getting them to kind of realize that, and and sometimes people will say things like, oh, I want to go much darker, I want to go darker, this and that, and it's kind of like, oh, I need to go up pigments, we need to go up shades, and sometimes it's not always necessarily about going up in darker shades. It's adding density that kind of can darken a treatment. So it's, sometimes, and also especially female clients, I find kind of, it's meeting their expectations when you're trying to get density within their existing hair. Sometimes you say, we won't always get that 100% coverage, but we will definitely get a good 70% coverage in there, and plus. But it's just meeting those expectations at the beginning, isn't it? And
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, every artist, every SMP artist can relate to that, to be honest with you, because, even if they don't like to admit it, the fact is, a first session is always going to be lighter than the
yeah,
end
yeah,
result. And like you say, it is a process. We try our hardest to obviously educate customers about that. We say, I always say to people that, you've been dealing with hair loss for 10 years. Why rush this process? You've only got 5 to 6 weeks for that end result. The first session, of course, is going to be lighter, but it's also important that we are very safe with how we're sort of approaching your treatment,
yeah, yeah,
So we keep it a bit lighter, and don't worry, like when you come back in for your second session, we're going to darken that. And on the third one, we're going to be finishing that off, and then it'll be looking great. So just trust the process is one word,
yeah,
one phrase that we hear
yeah,
thrown around a lot in the SMP
yeah,
industry, isn't it?
yeah, definitely, 100%. It's a big saying.
So one of the biggest concerns that customers have is how will you design their hairline? So could you describe the hairline design process with us?
Okay, so what we do is we obviously, once we get them in the chair, we kind of look for different ways of detecting where the hairline naturally obviously used to be. So there's ways of like using obviously the fingers, the gap, the space between like your three, your three fingers normally from the top of your eyebrow to the tip, in between the widest part. That's kind of generally where we kind of gauge where the hairline is. We get the client to raise their eyebrows, so we can see like where the facial muscles are and the structure of the face, the skin texture, things like that. So there's different ways of us knowing where the hairline should be. But what we do is we use like a white pencil then just to kind of draw the hairline out. So we draw that out. We get the client to have a good look. So we get the feedback from them, and where they think they'd like to have it, and we advise them
Yeah,
as well. So we kind of have a bit of a two-way kind of discussion, and come to the agreement where it looks good. But
yeah.
then obviously we draw that in, and we kind of go from there then, and kind of build it up each session then. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we always say to customers as well that, we never go ahead with the treatment until they are very happy with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
hairline design and where it should be. And another thing that I would kind of add to that as well, is that, we always keep that hairline a little bit higher, don't we?
yeah, yeah,
And, on
definitely.
the sort of first session. So sometimes I might have a customer comes into the clinic and they'll say to me, I want my hairline really low. And I'll say to them, you know what? We can work towards that.
Yeah.
But for your first one, let's, keep it a little bit higher, and we
Mm.
can always lower it on the
Lower
second
it
one. So
down.
what happens is sometimes they will be thinking back to their hairline when, 10 years ago and how low it was then. And when we do that first session and we get the hairline in place, then they go away after that first session. They come back and
Mm.
sometimes they say to us, actually, you're quite right about keeping that hairline a little bit higher.
Yeah,
Let's leave it where it is. And other times
yeah.
they might say, do you know what? I do want to lower it just a little bit. And I
Mm.
feel that as well, sometimes just lowering a hairline by like even half a centimeter can make quite a big
Mm.
change
Yeah.
for somebody as well, for someone's appearance.
Yeah, and I think I'll always say to the client, when obviously when we do that, when we, like you say, when we start that little bit higher up, and I'll always say to them, look, we can add, but we can't take away. So it's always, I think that's my favorite saying to them, is when they keep saying, oh, let's go a little bit lower. It's like you say, we'll do it gradually, bit by bit, bring it down each session. But it kind of gives them chance to get used to it, doesn't it? Because sometimes it may be a bit of a shock, kind of having this kind of low hairline if you go straight in that first session. It's good to transition, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're sort of kind of touching into this, and we sort of touched on this already. But the SMP treatment is performed over 3 separate sessions. What
Mm.
why is that, and what can a customer expect from each session?
The treatment is done over 3 sessions. From the first session to the second session, we normally leave about 10 days, 10 to 14 days. And then between the second and the third session, we'll probably give it about 3 to 4 weeks. But during the first session, what we do is we kind of lay in like that base foundation layer where we kind of figure out the shade, how, we keep it light. We keep that shade a lot lighter on that first session. We keep the density a lot looser. So we can kind of see how the pigment sits. That first session is a very safe session. So we keep the pigment light. And then what we can do then on the second session, we can assess how the pigment is settled in the skin, whether we need to kind of stick to the same shade, whether we need to go darker. And then obviously in that second session, then once we know how the pigment sits and how we're going with it, that's when we'll add a more of a denser session, kind of working around that session one. And then obviously on the third session, then sometimes, we need to get a little bit more density in, whether we need to go a little bit up in shade wise, or whether that's, if it's just a little bit of refining. But it's got to be
Yeah.
done as a process. So those, they've got to be built up, over the 3 sessions.
Yeah. So it's like a layering process, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Over the sessions, yeah, and it
Yeah.
darkens and darkens over those sessions as well.
Mm,
So
mm.
yeah, excellent. I mean, because some people do wonder, why does it take 3 sessions? Why can, some people actually ask us, can you do it in one session, for example? And I
Mm.
always say to them, like, let's say, for example, I mean, like you said, the first one, I call it a fact-finding mission. So it's kind of like you say,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a test. But if, for example, that first session, the pigment shade was a little bit on the darker side, or, they reacted slightly differently to it, or whatever, we need that first session, that first sort of safe
Mm,
session
mm.
to get that information. Then once we've got that information on that second one, we can sort of go full steam at it, can't we?
Yeah, yeah, 100%, definitely. It's always better to be safe, isn't it? Just to kind of, and it's
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And I suppose it's a gradual transition then, isn't it? And that's what keeps it quite settled looking. Because I think if you do go, in straight away on that first session with too much and too dark, then it's going to be kind of too in your face for that client as well. And they need that little bit of time to kind of gradually build it up and get used to it, I think.
Which clippers or shavers do you recommend for SMP? So once a customer's had the treatment
Mm,
done, what sort of
mm.
shavers or clippers should they use?
I think this is a bit difficult to start with because I think I've been through so many different clippers, trying them out, trying to get the right length. Um, and I think everyone's a little bit different because some people like to have a little bit more length than others, but we do recommend that you keep the treatment flat. So I always recommend something like this. This is something this is just like a copy of a Remington RX5. You can get, you can get a obviously cheaper version. But I just find these just so easy to use for, the clients as well, because they collect the hair inside. It kind of contours to the shape of the head as well. So, I say to clients, you can walk around the house and, you can, I don't know, do whatever. You can sit and watch TV, or you can go and do some cooking, and you can just kind of shave it at the same time, and it collects the hair inside. Or if I didn't use that, it would be something just as simple as this, but without any of the clips on. So it just as it is.
Yeah, and you've got to find what works for you as well. I mean, for myself, for example, I just throw in what clippers I use. I use the wall balding clippers and the wall detailer as well. So I find they take the hair growth down to a perfect length for SMP as well. Michelle, do you have any recommendations for controlling head shine?
I think there's quite a few out there on the market, isn't there? I know there's L'Oreal Pure Matte. I think there's ones like Head Lube. But yeah, I think it's always good to have a little kind of matte moisturizer to hand, really, isn't it?
So I wanted to ask you as well, how long does each session last? So if a customer's coming in for their treatment, how long will
Mm.
a treatment session last?
I always say to a client to put aside about 2 to 4 hours, somewhere between there. So I suppose it depends on the amount of hair loss and the amount of area that we're covering. But I kind of say normally, a maximum of 4 hours, and that kind of covers the initial before photos, if there's any after photos that need taken, if we need to shave the client down, drawing the hairline. So yeah, they're kind of anywhere between 2 to 4.
Yeah, excellent. That's good. And a lot of people do ask that. How long have they got to sort of be in the clinic for? So it's handy for people to know that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And once the treatment is complete, how long will once you've got that final result, how long would we expect sort of SMP to last?
I think it varies really. It is a permanent procedure, but you will get some fading. Um, and obviously, the more you look after it, you do your aftercare and you moisturize and you try and kind of put that SPF on when you're going to be out in the sun for a long amount of time. And I suppose the longer it will last, but we could probably say, we recommend a top up. That could be like 5 to 8 years time, really. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a permanent procedure, so but like you say, you do get a little bit of fading, which can be
Yeah,
topped
and I
up.
mean, I've had mine done. I think I got mine done around about 2010, and of course, I've had a couple of touch-ups since then. But
Mm,
it's like you say, it's permanent. It's never going to disappear. The treatment's
mm.
there, and the only way to remove SMP is by laser. And
Yeah.
of course, if the treatment's performed correctly, there's no reason why you'd want to remove it. But
Mm.
like I say, it's there. It's there to stay. And the only thing is, of course, I might need to go and get a touch-up every once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And normally, see, I suppose when you have a touch up, you wouldn't necessarily have to go through the 3 sessions again. It's just a one session. You're done again.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people worry about the touch-up sort of thing, and I mean, like you say, and it only normally takes about an hour to an hour and a half to get a
Yeah,
quick
yeah,
touch-up, and then you're good to go
yeah,
again for another,
yeah. That's
4 or 5 years again, aren't you? Maybe 6 years and
exactly.
so on.
Yeah, that's it.
How does SMP help your male clients? So, what type of results can male clients expect?
Well, I suppose it kind of depends what they come in and want, really, isn't it? It's some of them come in looking for different hairlines. Um, but yeah, so obviously we do like a challenge. We do kind of like to, if somebody comes in asking for something, we'll, as well as trying to keep it looking natural, we if they do come in and asking for something a little bit kind of different, we do try and kind of keep the client happy and go with what they want. But at the same time, we never do something that's gonna not look right and not look, you know, natural,
Yeah.
at all. So yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And you treat female clients as well. So, a
Yes.
lot of
Yep.
people will sort of wonder, how can SMP, so if SMP can work for a male who has
Mm.
got a shaven head of hair, it can give him the look of a full shaven head of hair. How
Yeah.
how does SMP work for somebody who is, for example, a female or a male who's got longer thinning hair, but they want to keep it longer?
It's the same kind of process with 3 sessions. But except obviously we're working amongst the hair, so we part the hair. Um, it can be a little bit more fiddlier, obviously, because you're working amongst the hair. But it doesn't necessarily. Some people don't have to shave their hair down, as long as they've got enough hair there to work within. To work within it, we can just add, you know, impressions in there, which kind of it camouflages the skin basically. So what we're doing is we're trying to kind of take away the lightness, the pinkness of the skin by adding those impressions to make it look like they've got that fuller head of hair. So that's for men and for women.
Yeah, and I do feel that it does give amazing results as well, the sort of density treatments, because obviously, like you say, you're sort of camouflaging the skin from showing through the hair, which is the most simplest way to put it for somebody to understand what it is that we're doing. And once I find that once the hair sort of sits on top of the treatment, it does give it that much more fuller kind of body or fuller kind of look. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, I know sometimes when I'm doing density treatments, you've got somebody who's they're thinning on the top there. We do the treatment underneath, and like you say, once you comb the hair back into place and everything and put it back into place and the hair sits on top of it, it looks much more fuller and darker and denser. So I know a while back you had a customer who requested to have a large parting through his treatment, so a large sort of scar parting through his head,
Yeah, yeah,
which we was discussing, wasn't we, a little while
yeah.
back? How was it for you taking on that request? And
Mhm.
do you normally deal with kind of extraordinary requests like that?
Yeah, I think, like, don't get me wrong, the majority of the clients that come in through the door um, are after like the natural soft hairlines, but you do get the odd client that will come in and kind of say, "Yep, I want this. I want this big scar put in." And I think what happened is, obviously, this client wanted this scar put in, which was a childhood scar. But then you get some clients then that kind of don't want scars. They want scars kind of hidden and taken away. But yeah, yeah, we do like it. Like I said, we do like a challenge, and we gave it a go, and it like we did have to compromise with a couple of little things just to make sure, because there was a couple of other requests as well. But yeah, it was good. We kind of turned it into something that looked really good. I was really, really pleased with it. But yeah.
That's it, and I think you do have to sort of compromise sometimes with customers because, they've got an idea in their mind that they want to get done, from the treatment. We know the boundaries of the treatment, what the treatment can and can't do. We also know what is going to look good and what's not going to look so good.
Mm,
And the last thing we want is, a customer to walk in and say to us, "I want this kind of, design that's a little bit kind of out there."
mm,
We do it for them. It's a little
yeah.
bit too much, and then 6 months later they come back to us and say, "Do you know
Mm,
what? Everybody takes the mick out of me, kind of thing, for this
yeah.
result." So it's definitely important that we sort of, in a sense, kind of negotiate the end result with customers. Just to
Yeah.
make sure that that the end result is natural.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think there's you get some clients as well that will kind of want a big shave. They want to completely shave everything off. So it's sometimes you have to say to them, like, you do need that bit of hair there as well, so we can blend into. So that's another kind of, can be a bit of a, it can be a little bit of a challenge as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what I say as well, that SMP is designed to match your short shaven hair. If you razor blade it to the point that there's no hair there, then, we haven't got anything to match to. So yeah, it's very important they have that bit of growth on there because, we need to match the SMP treatment to it.
Yeah, yeah.
So one question that comes up a lot, Michelle, one of the biggest concerns and worries for customers is, is the treatment going to turn blue?
Mm.
Is that a possibility? How would it happen? What's your take on it?
Okay. Well, obviously the pigment that we do use, it doesn't, it's designed not to do that. Obviously, it's a carbon-based pigment, and it just doesn't have that effect. It's a black pigment, and it's making sure that you're kind of working at the right depth, the right pressure. Um, so sometimes making sure the needle's not in the skin for too long, so but no, that's not going to happen. It's using the correct pigment, you won't get that blue, any kind of shade. And sometimes you get, if your regular tattoo can start kind of discoloring after a certain while. It's we don't get that with the SMP pigment that we use.
Yeah, and like you touched on there, like as long as the treatment is performed correctly, you was mentioning with the needle being in the skin and too long and too deep and stuff like that. So as long as the treatment's performed correctly using correct equipment, there's no chance of it turning blue. But of course, there are, you might get artists out there sometimes who might be untrained or are not
Yeah.
using the right equipment, and then there's all sorts of things could happen. So
Mm,
just making sure that people go to a trained professional who specializes in
mm,
SMP. And obviously you would always check their results as well before you have a treatment with them. And I think that people are in safe hands then. I've had my treatment, like I say, a very, very long time, and I've never seen any hues of blue. It's not something that we hear of at Scalp Culture, of course, but it's just, like I say, just making sure you get your treatment done by somebody who is a trained professional in
yeah.
SMP. Another one that we get a lot is that customers worry about, what's going to happen once their hair turns grey, if their hair turns grey, or if they've already got grey hair, can they have the SMP treatment?
Definitely, 100%. Because we're working on obviously the pigment being, it's a black pigment, and we dilute it down to match, on the grey scale. So whenever you shave your hair down, regardless of what color it is, whether it's blonde, whether your brown hair, grey hair, white hair, whenever you shave it down, that follicle will look grey. So the pigment that we use will match that. And you find some people, if they do start getting that little bit more grey when, as the age, the SMP fades with it. It tones down and fades a little bit with it. So some people like that. Some people think when it does fade down a bit, some people think, oh no, I want it kind of go a little bit
Yeah.
darker. But some people like to keep it faded. It's we always work on the grey scale. So.
Yeah, and I did do a video about this on the YouTube channel as well, explaining it because people assume that we just work with black and that's the only color we work with,
Mm-hmm.
and they assume that obviously once the hair starts to go grey, you're going to see black dots. But as you mentioned,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
working on the grey scale; it will lighten with time.
yeah.
And if they're, I just say to them, if your hair was to turn grey, that happens over time. It doesn't happen overnight. So in that case, they just might not need to come in for a touch up. They'll allow the treatment to lighten in shades of grey as their hair turns grey. You know. So another question I have here. I'm just firing questions at you now. Yeah. So can SMP camouflage scars, and if so, how does that work?
Okay, yeah, we can definitely camouflage scars. Obviously, we make sure the scars are fully healed. So, say for example, if someone's had um, FUT or FUE scars,
That's the hair
the hair
transplants, right?
transplants. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's the hair transplant scars. So it's the FUE or FUTs. The FUT is like the strip scar for, or the FUE scar. It's where they harvest from different areas around the back, the back of the head, which is more spaced out. So yeah, so what we do is, so we have a slight different approach for those types of different scars, but we obviously kind of work. It's the same kind of process really with building up density over time. So we still do it over a couple of sessions. And, we build up in shade, and we kind of fill in, get the density in those sparser areas, and then we kind of very lightly scatter. We scatter around it into the existing hair, then, so it kind of, so it blends in.
Yeah, so if somebody has got a hair transplant scar, as you mentioned, from the FUE or the FUT, we can use SMP to camouflage that, and I think the results are pretty nice as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to say we do make sure that the scars are fully healed and they're not raised and red, and we're not going to kind of do it on anything that's, any angry scars or anything like that. So we make sure they're nice and fully healed, and
How long do they need to be healed for before you can do the SMP treatment?
9 to 12 months, possibly, just long enough to kind of give the skin plenty of time to heal and get back
Yeah,
to good
yeah.
health, ready.
We
It's got to be
we
in
did
good
have
health.
a we had a customer once before actually that wanted to get the SMP treatment done over the weekend, and literally the week before he had only just had a hair transplant, so the skin was still red, raw, and unhealed, and obviously he wanted to sort of camouflage that before he had to go back into work. So of course, we had to say to him that unfortunately that's not possible.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, and yeah, it's definitely a good treatment for it, and sometimes we get people coming in asking for scars. Where you get some clients that come in and want their scars hidden, whether they've had accident scars, or scars from operations. I suppose it depends on the circumstances as well. Some people want them hidden. Some people want them exaggerated and more
Yeah,
obvious.
Yeah, I definitely see that as well, like you say, I mean, we had a customer a while back that he had a scar, and he said to us that his brother gave him the scar. I didn't probe any more into that. Maybe, something had happened to his brother, I don't know, but he said his brother had given him the scar, and so he wanted to keep the scar. So, that was absolutely fine, and we left a little nick of a scar in there. And I feel that sometimes, leaving a little scar in there, it kind of adds authenticity to the look as well.
Definitely.
So, Michelle, as SMP artists, we all have a funny story to tell. Can I ask you, do you have a funny story, and what is it?
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times actually, but it's just one that kind of sticks in my mind. I've obviously had a client who was coming and having the treatment done, and he didn't tell his wife that he was having it done. So, and I said to him, I said, "Surely is she not going to see? Is she, is she not going to notice?" He said, "No, she won't
Yeah.
notice." And she was messaging him when he was here,
Oh
and I
God.
just had visions of her just using the Find My iPhone app and banging my door down and just accusing me of being the other woman. And it's kind of like, no, you know,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
tattooing your husband's head. I'm not doing anything. So, yeah,
Imagine.
but you'd be surprised how many people actually don't tell their partners that they're having it done, and that just goes to show how subtle, each session is, how we
Yes.
transition into each from start to finish. It's a very gradual, you know, approach. So it's yeah, you'd be surprised how many don't tell them.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, and I think that I guess sort of casting my mind back to when I had SMP. I definitely didn't want to sort of announce it to the world. And I think that once I'd had the treatment complete, I really didn't want to tell people, which is quite strange because fast forward to now, here's me like live streaming to whoever wants to watch it to let them know that I've got a head tattoo. So it's quite, I think that once you get used to it, you're like, do you know what? I know it looks good. I'm not really bothered about who knows, you know. So, you know, you do feel more comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, but funny you should say that. I think we always give the clients options with taking photos. You know, we always say it's nice to take photos before and after for their kind of record, really, just to kind of see the difference. It's something to compare from when they first started their journey to when they finish. And you'll say to them, right, you know, when it comes to taking photos, you know, if you're happy for us to use them for social media, obviously we'll always get their permission first. But
Yeah.
at the beginning, we'll say, like, you know, if you are happy for us to use them on social media, do you want your face covered? Do you want your face blurred out? And sometimes you'll find a lot of them will say, yeah, cover my face. You know, I don't want my face being seen. And I find when it comes to the third session, when it's completed, and, you know, I say to them, you know, still want me to cover your face? They're like, no, it's fine. Just
I knew
leave
you
it.
was going to say
Leave it. Yeah.
that.
And the amount of clients that have done that, it's crazy. And it's good to see, because it's, you know, it shows that they're confident with it and they don't care who knows. They don't, you know,
Yeah, yeah, and
everyone's
you know,
different, you know.
you know, it's funny because sometimes we post pictures on the Scalp Culture social media, and people will say it's a different person. Why has he got his face covered in the before picture,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's showing his face in the after one?
yeah,
And it's literally because of the story that you just said, where they'll come in,
yeah,
they'll say, "I want to cover my face up." By the third session, they're feeling great, they're feeling confident, they're like, "Show the world," you know.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, not
But
ashamed of
yeah,
it.
yeah, but it is also important for customers to know, like, you know, I know you've already mentioned it, but you know, if they don't want their pictures shown on social media, they don't have to have their photos shown on social media. We've
Mm,
got photos, we've got thousands of photos, you know, that don't go on our social media. You know, we've got like customers, photos of customers, of course, which we don't share online. So yeah, that's absolutely perfectly fine as well, isn't it? You know.
yeah, definitely. Yep. It's the, you know, the client's preference. It's, you know, it's entitled, and we respect, you know, we respect that. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michelle, you also offer training down there in Wales. What can students expect to learn from you?
It's a very in-depth and very knowledgeable course. A lot of feedback we get is there's no stone left unturned. You know, they come away just ready to get, you know, stuck in straight away. You know, we have models that come in, so you get to kind of, you know, get stuck in. And when I did my training, you know, with Scalp Culture, it was one of the biggest sellers for me. Is not, you know, is not kind of coming away from training and feeling like I'm on my own, which you don't get. That it's, you come away and you got that, you know, that you got that, we've got that group where you can kind of put any comments in if you've got any concerns or anything, any questions. And there's no, you know, nothing's too small or too big to ask, you know. It's but yeah, this it's a very in-depth and very knowledgeable course.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very important to sort of, you know, obviously, firstly, for somebody to receive the correct training, a very in-depth training, but also, like you say, receive that after support as well, because the last thing you want is, you know, to go and learn SMP and then just be left on your own.
Mm,
You know, when you've got like, sometimes it can be little questions like, you know, just a little bit of support on the pigment shade that you should use on a customer and things like that. And if you haven't got that support, it can really throw you off as a new artist. So
mm,
I do think that the support we offer students, you know, as trainers is fantastic. You know,
mm.
um, it's priceless, really, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it does it. It covers everything. It covers everything from, you know, the marketing side of things to, you know, the pigment mixing, and, you know, it everything. It covers everything.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, what led to you being a successful SMP artist? And the reason why I'm asking you that is because, you know, when we first met, you was obviously in a, you know, sort of 9 to 5 job, which you didn't want to do anymore. You no longer do that 9 to 5 job, and you run a successful SMP clinic. So, you know, what led to that?
I think it was just determination, really. I think it's just, you know, don't it's not going to happen overnight. It does take time to kind of to build things up, but it's not kind of, letting things knock you back. It's sometimes the nerves was the biggest part for me. I'd come away just like really nervous, thinking, right, I'm doing this now. I'm tattooing somebody's head. This is a big thing,
Yeah.
you know. But it's just pushing yourself past that, and it's just you keep going, and you keep you're constantly learning when you're on the on the go. But yeah, it's just that determination, and you find a love for it. You really do. It's I'm so passionate about it. It's great. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think you never get bored, do you, of seeing that transition, that those end results.
Yeah.
So it does keep you kind of going, doesn't it? But you're
Yeah.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, to be a successful artist, of course, you've got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, haven't you? And
Mm.
congratulations to you again to
Thank you.
for getting to where you wanted to get to.
Yep. No, definitely. And I can manage my own time, and yeah, but yeah, it's the best thing I've done. Best thing I
Excellent.
have ever did.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely agree with that for myself as well. I'm very glad that I got into the industry. And
Mm.
I'm always honest with people. If you're going to set up any kind of business, it's going to take hard work and determination, of course. And we were speaking before we came live on air about the sort of challenges we face as business owners, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you just keep on pushing through them. You keep them nerves of steel and keep battling through, and
Yeah.
you get rewarded for with a successful business,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
for doing so.
Yeah, I think it's like I said about the nerves when I first started, which is anybody's going to get that when you're starting something new and doing what you're doing. But it's just amazing how a client will come through the door, and I don't get that. I don't get any nerves. It's great
Yes.
because I enjoy it, and yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that a lot of students can also go online, and newly trained artists can go online
Mm.
and they see artists that have been doing it a long time, and they kind of compare their beginning to the
Yeah.
other artists sort of 5 or 10 years in the industry.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got to understand that of course you are going to be nervous at first. I was
Mm.
extremely nervous. I mean, you don't hear many artists sort of say that and or agree to it. I was
Mm.
extremely nervous when I first started doing SMP. I knew what I was doing in the sense of
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
skill set, as did you. But of course, it's everything, isn't it? It's like me doing these live streams, for example. It's like this is the second one I've done, so I can get a little bit nervous going live on social media and so on. But the more and more you do something, the more you get used to it, and the more it becomes normal, and the more your
Yes.
nerves settle. So just like yourself, I
Mm.
no longer, of course, get nervous doing an SMP treatment. I know exactly what I'm doing, although we're
Mm.
forever
Mm.
learning. But the nerves do fade away over time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you enjoy it.
Yeah.
You enjoy it.
So
Yeah.
so what advice would you give to someone who is thinking about becoming an SMP artist? So if you got somebody, so let's rewind back to years ago when you was thinking about doing this, you was in that 9 to 5, and you were thinking, do you know what, shall I get into the
Mm.
SMP industry? What
Yeah.
advice would you give to the person?
No time like the present. Do it. Just
Yeah.
don't even think about it. Be spontaneous like I did. I just kind of, I picked up the phone, and I think I called you, Justin, and we had a little chat about the training course. And I think I booked on for the next week. I was on the course end for the next week, and I booked my hotel, I booked the train ticket, and I was off. And I've never looked back since. It's honestly, I know I've said it before. It's the best thing I've ever done, and I think sometimes, yes, I did sit back and I kind of initially, and I did a lot of research. I started following a lot of SMP artists and or different clinics, and I looked at their techniques and everything. And I think I just got to a point where I wasn't happy in my 9 to 5 job, and I just thought, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be spontaneous, and I'm going to do it. What harm is it going to is it going to make if it's not for me, it's not for me. But I've done it, I've tried it, and I've tried my best.
Yeah. Yeah. And it paid off, didn't it?
It did. It definitely did.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
Another one I wanted to ask you quickly, and this is the last one, is what advice would you give to somebody who is on the fence about having the SMP treatment? So, I mean, I can understand how somebody can be quite nervous when they're thinking about having SMP as a hair loss solution. I was nervous before I had my treatment done. What advice can you give to somebody who's on the fence about getting the actual treatment?
Mm. I think sometimes it's always good to come in. If somebody ever wanted to come in and have a bit of a consultation, they could come in and they could see the clinic. They can see meet the artist, they can meet the person who's going to be doing it, get ask them as many questions. Yeah, it's always good to kind of know the process, know how many sessions you're going to need. And I always say to people, I always explain the process as it's a settled transition. It's gradual, and I think sometimes you can overthink it, and but it's always good to just have a chat, go and speak to the artist, and find out the process, what's involved.
Yeah, and sometimes, people can sort of over assess treatments as well. And I guess I was a little bit guilty of that when I first had my treatment done. I kind of look in the mirror and I'd say, well, that dot's a little bit different to that one, and so on, so on. But in actual fact, when you look at natural hair, there's irregularities in natural hair anyway. So, I always say to people, as long as you can stand back and look in the mirror and say, I've got a full shaven head of hair, that is, the job done, that's complete. But I will say, as well, just add my little bit of input here as well, that, if you are on the fence about getting the SMP treatment, for me, it's one of the best things I ever did. And as I said earlier, I feel like it kind of freed me from hair loss,
Mhm.
Otherwise, what would the option be now? I might still be here and
Mm.
I'm balding, or maybe I went down another route and had a hair transplant and I've got scars to hide, and, things like that. And I think that SMP just gave me that sort of freedom without all of the sort of hassles that come with other hair loss solutions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, then. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Michelle. I think that wraps everything up. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will speak to you soon.
Okay. Bye. Bye. Bye.